Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun Adebayo and Tim Vickery.
Yeah, and welcome to the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. Great to have your company. Let me just say very quickly, the Legendino is in Rio de Janeiro, and we both want you, okay, jokes aside, and we both want you to make sure that you subscribe to the pod and follow us on our WhatsApp group, Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. And I'll tell you what, we have gone to no short expense to bring in an Academy Award winner, Oscar winner, Asif Kapadia is with us. I'm sure I pronounced that wrongly, and I apologize, Asif. But I'm going to let Tim take it away with all the questions about your amazing new book, Kenny Dalglish. And Asif, for those who don't know, is the guy who did the Maradona documentary as well as famously the Amy Winehouse Amy documentary, which won him an Academy Award. Tim, it's all yours. Rock and roll.
Go and have a blow. You've earned it. What Dotun will do now is he'll go to a corner of his room and he'll hang upside down like a bat, which is what he does. But when he's not on air in the wee small hours of the morning. Asif, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for making this film. First question is an obvious one. Why?
Thanks, Tim. Really pleasure to be talking to you, and kind of in a weird way, almost to Dotun. It's really nice to be back. Why? I'm a Liverpool fan. I grew up in North London, but I'm a Liverpool fan. I had Kenny's picture up on my wall as a kid, and then, from the kind of humble beginnings of Hackney, I then become a film director. And then one day this opportunity comes along to make a film about Kenny. And I think about it because I love football and I make films. And then mixing the two is always you're a bit worried about it, particularly when it's your team and your favorite player as a kid. But I'm really glad I did it because I think he's amazing. And he's more incredible as a human being than I kind of remembered as a child. Mm-hmm. And then I also realized that I guess in a way the film becomes me as someone growing up in North London in the 70s and 80s. I'm sort of dealing with Thatcherism, and I'm dealing with a bunch of other political things that go with football, particularly with this movie.
In all of the ones that you've done, is this the most personal?
I would say so, yeah, because, after your mum and your family, there's football. Like before anything else, there's football, and being a fan from like the age of 3 and playing on the street with your mates, still playing now five-a-side with your mates, watching football, the way it affects your mood. When your team wins, you're like, can't believe you've got this cloud, even at your age, you're kind of walking around in this cloud. And then you get to make a film about a period of time, you remember it a certain way, and then you revisit it, and you revisit these characters. And so, yeah, it's very personal in that way. But like I said, it's personal because of I'm a fan from afar, who later on in life, I was able to afford to go to Anfield and watch games and travel abroad and go home and away more. But when I was younger, it was a thing on TV. Yeah. On the radio, of course, as well.
Indeed, yes. More on the radio than it was on TV when we were kids. And I'm class of 65. I think you're a little bit younger.
72.
Yeah. So it's a vital 7 years. So you really do get this impression of Kenny Dalglish as a man of his times. That for me is the thing which is most striking from this. It's Kenny as a man of his times, and a man who incorporates the values of his place and his time at a moment when those values are under attack. That seems to me to be the heart of the film.
Yeah, it's a man brought up a certain way by his parents in Glasgow. And it's quite British, the film, in a way, isn't it? Because of the accents and the character who then does what he does at Celtic, which is an amazing career, and where he's from, and that kind of idea of, leaving school at 15, becoming a footballer, what his dad does for a living, what his mum does, being brought up a certain way, then leaving and going to Liverpool, another similar city, working class city, growing up through that team being so amazing, and he joins it, and the pressure of following on from Keegan, and then the incredible period of kind of achievements and winning. And then these disasters are happening, these disasters one after another. And Kenny, when something goes wrong, he always steps up. He's always the man saying, okay, I'll be here. I'll do whatever I need to do. And always doing it for the club and the city and the people. And I think that's what I realized after we made the film, that it's really about leadership, about people who are there when you need them, who do the right thing. In the context of the world we're living in now, where everyone in power and leadership are the most awful people who are doing it for themselves, this is a time when he specifically did things for everyone else. And the humbleness of the man is what really comes out.
Yeah, and I love that line that he became, of Liverpool, the father of the city. We'll get there. What I didn't know, I know many, many things that I didn't know. And I lived through all of this period with great intensity, but I didn't know a lot about the Scotland background, because we didn't.
Yeah.
And so the whole, you mentioned two very similar cities, Glasgow and Liverpool, but there's one thing that he obviously seems to latch onto in Liverpool, and he loves, and that's the sectarian thing is much, much lighter. And I didn't know that he was a Protestant brought up in a Rangers environment who ends up playing for Celtic. I didn't know that. I found that whole thing fascinating, especially the contrast with Liverpool when he goes there.
And he married a Catholic, all the way through. He's a Protestant who plays for Celtic, who marries, told to you by his Catholic brought up wife, Marina, who's a very key character. I've made films about athletes and sports people or famous people, but in this case, it really is this double act. His wife, Marina, is amazing and so important. And, that family unit is what it's all about. So right from their beginnings, they're sort of breaking the rules and bringing together the two sides of, like, the religious kind of divide in Celtic. And then he comes to Liverpool, and obviously that's different. And I think the key thing, Tim, is that, he goes to Liverpool at 26. He has an amazing career.
Yeah.
A lot of which we didn't see.
No, and we looked down our noses at. See, I remember when he came, and maybe you're a little bit too young for this, but I vividly remember when he came, because and Keegan was our biggest idol, and I remember, because I was part of it, the resistance. Yeah, this Mickey Mouse, and it took me a lot. And this is entirely my mistake. Obviously, it took me a long time to be won over. Oh yeah, he is the real thing. But there was a lot of resistance when he came down.
Yeah, and resistance from lots of people, because Keegan was the man. He became he won the European Player of the Year twice, as someone said, no mug, and then Kenny's meant to replace him, and he just does it in his own way, in a very different way. But the idea that he had such a brilliant career there, and then has to start again, and he's nervous. I love the fact he keeps talking about, he's really scared. I'm nervous. I'm afraid, but he's like so brilliant. He was so good from the beginning. And it is like, we start with this, Roy the Rovers. He's like got a Roy the Rovers career. It's comic book. Your first season, you come and you win the European Cup and you score the winning goal. What a great goal as well. He just did it again and again and again. Like, you couldn't make up a story. But then that's all going somewhere up to a point, and then he has to step into leadership in a different way. A lot of that footage from Celtic also has never been seen. We found like a fan club that had Super 8 footage that had never been digitized. So, we've got footage that people have never seen before. Even now, we're finding new material. That's amazing.
And I'd never seen the colour footage of 67 Celtic Inter. I'd never seen. Oh, wow, it happened in colour. I didn't know it happened in colour. I thought it was black and white.
Yeah.
Wonderful footage from Lisbon. Terrific footage. There's a continuity there, isn't there, between Jock Stein and Bob Paisley?
Yeah, I think the what I like about the film in a way is the way it transpires. Is you go from, in one way, Roy of the Rovers and Panini stickers to we finish and it becomes the beginning of the Premier League and Sky Sports. And in terms of football managers, we're talking about, Jock Stein, like a legend of the game of Scotland. We have a bit of Fagan, and we have Bob Paisley, and we have Shankly, and we have, you know, all of these characters that are kind of in their own way, kind of they're amazing, but again, really humble. Shankly's amazing. I love that little section where he comes
Fantastic.
in. You know, the voices and the accents. Yeah. And then also, you know, what's interesting is the way this one came about. Because I always thought Kenny's not someone who's, I'm like, he doesn't really like talking, does he? He doesn't really like giving interviews. That's my memory of him. He really didn't like journalists. It was always like quite cutty, and you've got to be so sharp to keep up with him. But then I meet him and I said, look, I have a particular style. I don't really bring a crew or cameras. We're just going to have a chat. Like we're chatting now. We'll just have a microphone and we'll chat. And he went, okay, fine. And I just got him in the right moment. He was like ready to chat. He was really ready to just talk, and he would just tell me the stories and he would talk. And I didn't think that he'd really narrate the film as much as he does. And then through him talking about it, then I go, okay, I've got to talk to Marina. She's really key. Okay, his two best friends, Alan Hansen and Souness, I've got to talk to them. So there's very few people. Most of the film kind of voices are Scots. Yeah. And then you have the managers that come through. So Jock Stein, the idea of giving him his position on the pitch, long before we thought about this idea of a false nine, a striker, but he's halfway between a midfield and a striker, and you move from here. And that's all Jock Stein.
All the best, you wee bastard. What a lovely, lovely line to send him off, you know, down.
He drove him. He actually drove him to Liverpool. He dropped him off. The manager drops him off to the next club. When did that happen, Love?
It's the values that he inherits from Billy McNeil, who's driving him to training when he's an unknown. He's then passing on. I think the biggest thing that I took away from the whole film, which I believe is available on Amazon Prime and is wonderful. I just wonder if it could have been a series rather than a film, but there you go.
I think Kenny's ready to do more.
Right. Good. Good. The biggest thing that I took away is, and we're talking about a man and his time and his values. And I'd seen in my mind Ferguson as, if you like, the last of the Mohicans, drawing on the values of that collective culture. And I've changed my mind after watching this for two reasons. Firstly, because of the way that Ferguson ended with the Glazers thing, which I think is it's a stain on someone who has preached collective values. And Dalglish, in his own quiet way, how he lives those values. And it's interesting you mentioned family and the importance of family, because we are seeing this film, and you place this film in the context of Thatcherism. And the Thatcher line, I remember it clearly. There is no such thing as society. There is only families, and there are only individuals and their families. And what you see with the Dalglish story that you've told is the community as a wider extension of family. You know, his family come first, but his family aren't disassociated from community. And he loves the community that he's able to be part of in his new home in Liverpool. He loves how he's making friends instantly. So it's a definition of family, which is not exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's really interesting, Tim. We had a screening in Rome, and we showed it in Rome, and there was a journalist from Rai TV who interviewed me, who said, I don't know anything about Kenny Dalglish, never heard of him. She's like, I love him now. I love this man. And she said the word that kept popping up. And now, since she said this to me, whenever I see the film, the word really comes, people. He's always saying, I do it for the people. It's about the people. The people, I'll do what the people want. And his whole thing is, it's about the people. I play for the people. The people supported us, and now it's our turn to support the people. Everything is about people.
Key line in the film, that.
It's not it's not, me. It's the group, the collective, the community, the people. Not even just Liverpool fans, Everton fans, whoever. It's and that's the thing. And all of that comes back to how he was brought up by his parents, his mum and dad. They brought me up a certain way. That's how we were in Glasgow. You care about the people. Then he goes to another city where you care about the people. And then particularly when you feel like everyone's attacking you, even makes you stronger, that you worry about your people. And this was kind of my bond growing up in North London to Liverpool, more so than the teams around me in London, was I felt growing up in Hackney, we were always being attacked by kind of what the cuts, the school that I went to, the hospitals being shut down, people from the local kind of hospital for kind of people who are mentally unstable, just being put in the street, and then it's called care in the community. And so on the way to school, people with hammers are attacking us and screwdrivers, and we're 11 years old, dodging people trying to kill us. That was growing up in Hackney in the 70s, 80s. So I always kind of felt this link to this other place on the other end of the country, which the government did not like and wanted to kind of like make suffer. And I thought, that's my experience, actually. That's I really always felt that. And really that's my link to Naples, I'd say, when I then go to do the Maradona film.
To do the Maradona thing, yes.
I have a similar thing of, this is a place which is like being attacked by everyone. That makes us stronger, and all we care about, you cover your people. So I think there's a link there that I felt growing up.
I'd never made this connection, but when I was a kid, all of my South Asian mates, all of them, all the ones I knew, they were all Liverpool fans, you know. And obviously I understood you're not going to support the local teams, because the local teams, the stadium is a place of hatred where you know, and the hatred which is possible and was visible then inside football stadiums was just, it was unreal. So you obviously you don't feel any affinity whatsoever. So I'd always thought, oh yeah, they're going for Liverpool because Liverpool are the winners. And you've put another layer on that. It's not just that they were the winners, it's because they were the winners in the face of so many attacks. That's a really interesting perspective, I think.
And also, you know, the thing about going to football in those days, it wasn't even just the football ground. It was getting to the ground on the train.
Oh, yeah.
It was the travel, when you'd be on a train and you'd be surrounded by certain teams, fans, and you're like, oh, man, what am I doing on here? You know, so there was a lot of that. It was really bad. So you're right. I've heard you say this, and you're absolutely right. It was one of those things that, it was quite traumatic going to watch football. So you did watch it from afar, and then you had a favorite team and you had a favorite player. They also happened to be brilliant. But there was also this idea of, then you're watching them being attacked by the government, who don't like football or football fans anyway, and want to put you in cages and electrify the fences around pitches. And all of this is going on, isn't it? So football violence and the tension and all of that was a part of that moment that, you know, in a way, the ending of this film is when all of that starts to change, when the Premier League comes in, when seated stadiums come in. Awful things have to happen in order for changes to happen to make it then the world's greatest sport and biggest making league and money making league and all of that. You know, that's kind of where the chapter ends for me. That's why the story ends when it does, because the next thing is, you know, the Premier League comes in and Champions League will come in soon. All of these records will be erased. So my kids grow up not even knowing how many goals Ian Rush has scored, because they never mention him on the TV. You know, it's like this stuff never happened, you know. And I think I wanted to make something. My teenage boys, like, they know Kenny Dalglish because they play FIFA, and he's there on their FIFA team with like Maradona, Cruyff, Messi, Kenny Dalglish, but they've never actually seen the guy play. So I was like, okay, I'd like to make a film for my lot, for you and me, our generation, of what football used to be like here. And then also for the kids to go, you know, they were not playing in slow motion. He's so good. And I'd forgotten how good he was. I mean, of course, there could have been a lot more of that. But then you're also dealing with how there were seasons where it wasn't televised. Yeah. We had entire seasons which were only on the radio.
Yes. And his genius as a footballer, the mental side of it. I mean, one of the things that I love was the awareness of what's going on around. And I love George Best talking about him, comparing him to Di Stefano. It's worth watching the film just to hear the intelligence of George Best analysing the footballer that was Kenny Dalglish, because it's remarkable. But his intelligence, the way that he's, in order to find out what's going on around him, he's using the shadows. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great story, because I heard that and I was like, really? And then, of course, we're talking about a time when they were in the corners of the stadium. There were big lighting stands in the corners of the stadium. So they'd be shining them into the middle of the pitch. So you'd get four shadows. And he would say, well, you know where the defender is because you're looking at the ball anyway. And then you can see the shadow of the defender coming up. So if he's coming from that side, just take the ball the other side. I mean, it's so obvious. And then he goes, but the only problem is sometimes you got four shadows, so you got a decision to make. But it's just like the gags keep coming with Kenny. But yeah, the idea of knowing where your defender is by looking at their shadow, not even, and then you feel them, and then you know, famously he'd use his backside to kind of hold them off. Yeah, there was all this stuff. I love it when you can try and get into their brain.
Yes.
That's the job for me as a director, whether it is Maradona, whether it's Amy, or whether it's Kenny. And with Kenny, you know, you watch the 78 European Cup final at Wembley, and when you see the kind of footage of it, the coverage of it, it looks like he's having a pretty bad game, actually. You know, he keeps missing the ball. He makes a pass. It's not great.
See, I remember watching it because I was just turning 13. And my main memory is that he had a mare.
Yeah.
But he scores the winner.
Yes, exactly. But the I don't know if you remember, but my memory is that was a really unusual goal. Or dink, chip.
Yeah. And we know, because of your film, we know now why he did it. Yeah. Because he was fabulous at analysing the goalkeepers, and he saw that this goalkeeper went to ground early.
So don't ask me how he did this in those days, but when at Celtic, he's already studying goalkeepers. When a kid at Celtic, he's studying, I know that goalkeeper always dives a certain way during a penalty. He goes down on his right and he goes on one knee. And he does exactly that. His first penalty that he scores for Celtic. So he was watching everything from a very young age, whenever he could, wherever he could, to study what the other team would do, what the defenders would do, which way do they naturally go, which way do they turn when they go to chase after the ball, what does a goalkeeper do? So then when we get to Wembley 78, to you and I, we're watching it going, he's having a bad game. But he's like, no, but I'm studying the goalie. And he goes down early every time. Whenever someone's running at him, he's around. So if I get a chance, whenever that chance comes, I know not to put it on the ground. And then that's why that scene becomes kind of revelation, because you're going, it's totally different. Suddenly you go, oh, that's the brains of the man. He's been studying the goalie all the way through, even while what looks like he's having a bad match.
Yes,
maybe they all do this. Maybe this is normal now. Now they have teams of people
who
collect all the data.
Yeah. Now they have teams of people. Then, and I love this. I absolutely love this as someone who is of the analog age, struggling with a digital world. The notebooks, ladies and gentlemen, the notebooks that Liverpool keep. Yeah, all those notebooks with all your pen and paper won't let you down, will it? Will it? You know. So I loved all that glimpse of that world. And also,
can I just tell you about that? So he mentions that, Tim. He mentions that, right? And so we go, I hear that in the interview and going, do these notebooks exist? Who's got these notebooks? So we then ask around, and like Joe Verheegen's son's got one, and Ronnie Moran's son's got one, and Kenny's got one. And then we're going through these notebooks, and it will literally be like, you know, signed Kenny Dalglish, like just handwritten text, and then training at 4. Right. And then there'll be things like they go off and the European Cup final wins will just be like 2 lines, like the same amount of detail that goes into a pre-season friendly against Preston. Yes. And it'll be like, and you look at it again, look at the date. That's the European Cup final that they won. And there was that one season where, and I think most of the kind of good lines are written by Joe Fagan, actually, but it was something like, you know, won the European Cup, won the League Cup, second in the league, not bad season, you know.
Yeah, fabulous. And then what I didn't know that he'd been offered the manager job, or effectively player manager, months earlier, and this transition was going to happen. You know, we didn't know that, did we? We thought it was like panic thing to do after the absolute disaster of Heysel, but he'd been sitting on that for months, knowing that was going to happen, and then he's thrown in at that moment.
Yeah, which makes it worse because only he knows, his wife knows, and then Heysel happens, and she's like, "I'm dreading it because now he's going to have to take over." So you're right. The way we perceive it was it happens, and they go, "We need somebody," but they'd already gone to him. And, you know, he's 34. He's like, I've got a 4-year contract. Are they calling me because they want to take away my contract? And they're like, no, we want you to take over. And as he always does, he's like, okay, I'm going to call my dad up for advice. Calls his dad up. And his dad says the same line. If they think that much of you, then, you know, you should take it. That's if they think you're the right man, then you're the right man for the job. He calls up Marina's dad as well, often for advice. and he's ready to take over. And they think, you know, they're going to win a European Cup, and it will be a great way to start. And of course, this awful thing happens, which, you know, there's a lot of footage that we see when we were making this film from Heysel, and then, as we'll come to, I'm sure, Hillsborough, which is like so awful to watch. But I felt we had to go there because that happened. And again, in the worst moments, Kenny will always be there. The day after, doing a press conference, taking over. And I don't remember him being, I mean, he wasn't captain. You know, there were other people that seemed more vocal. I thought he was one of the quiet guys, but actually I've learned through the film, he was always the leader in the background.
How easy was it to include him in the project, to convince him?
I think, I'll be honest, I think his kids played a big part. Kelly Cates, who presents Match of the Day now, and Sky Sports, right? She liked Amy. So I remember she was a fan of Amy, the film. And his son, Paul, really liked the Maradona film. So I think when I first met Kenny, I don't think he'd seen anything I'd made. But the kids had put in a good word. and then me meeting with him. So I think it was a Napoli game, Champions League. I think we're going back to 2022, maybe. I was up at Liverpool watching the match, and I get a message saying, come up to the boardroom. So I'm in the lift and I go up, and it's funny considering where we are right now in the world. As I'm going into the boardroom, Mo Salah's walking past, and I kind of went, without helping myself, Mo, I love you. And he walked, he walked past and kind of looked back at me, and I was like, oh, I just came out. And then I was like, okay, that's Mo. And I carried on in there, and Kenny was there with his family. They're always there, sat at a table, and we have a quick chat. And I just say, look, this is how I work. It's going to be really low key. We'll just meet, we'll record it. No cameras, no crew, no makeup, none of that. I'll keep it as simple as possible. And then I put everything else together. And he was like, okay, that sounds good to me. I met Marina. I met Michael Edwards when he was there before he left. And I got in with him. And actually that season, I think, is when we ended up playing Real Madrid in Paris in the European Cup final. And I got tickets from Edwards, actually. So I was in that tunnel where the crush happened. Yeah. Before the European Cup final, and when everyone was I got in there early. So that was a really traumatic moment, I have to say, in recent history of UEFA's organization of events. But that was the season that I met with Kenny. And then it takes about a year to put the money together, get the project together, do some research. He gave me lots of VHS tapes. So a lot of that footage, the home movies, that he's holding the camera most of the time. So he's not in shot. Really hard to find a shot with Kenny in there. But some of the family stuff at Christmas is really fun with the kids. So that's where that all came from. He handed over loads of personal footage and photographs. And then we just started meeting every now and again in Toxteth, where the kind of, as my local Liverpool friends would say, the uprisings happened in Toxteth. And so now there's like a podcast studio in there. So Kenny being Kenny, he doesn't ask for much. First thing is like, where can I park? He wants to know he can park his car. We go, it's okay, it's got parking. Okay, great. Do you need anything else? Is there anything else you want? Do you want to drink anything in particular? Do you need any kind of food, or what would you prefer? He goes, no, I'm fine. What I'd like, a couple of cans of Iron Brew and a family-sized packet of dairy milk. So I'm not joking. That was what Kenny wanted: a car parking space, a couple of cans of Iron Brew, and dairy milk. We were okay. And that's what, and then at the end of the interview, we'd meet, we'd talk for a couple of hours, and he'd be just really great, talk about everything and anything, really good, really still sharp. And then he'd be off with his little bag. He came down to London for one interview. I couldn't get up to Liverpool. So we asked him to come down to Soho, and he came down. Quite hard to find Iron Brew in Soho, Tim. That was work. That was probably the most challenging thing, was finding Iron Brew in Soho.
I remember walking through Soho.
It was really smooth.
I remember walking through Soho with many years ago, an old mate of mine who was really down on his luck at the time and sleeping on settees and so on, looking at someone who was drinking away. And my mate said, yeah, the only thing that separates me from him is tenants. So maybe it's tenants is easier to find than Iron Brew. So I imagine that the stuff that you got from him for you to make the documentary is a dream, because I imagine to do it without a kind of string, to do it without a narrator is difficult, isn't it? Because you've got to find a way to tell the story without a guide. But then Kenny was your guide, because the stuff you get from him is so good that you could just build everything around that.
Yeah, and that's the thing I didn't know until we met, and I didn't have an idea how it would come together. I just start by interviewing. I start by talking, as you and I did years ago for the Maradona film. Yeah. Right at the very beginning, one of the first people I spoke to, I just talked to people and saying, let's just see what comes out of the conversation. And with Kenny, he was like, okay, you know, let's start at the beginning. And we start at the beginning, and he starts telling me about his mum and his dad and his parents and growing up. And, you know, I kind of trained as a carpenter in case it didn't work out. And we just started putting it together with the pictures. I have a brilliant editor, Matteo Bini, who's Italian, Inter fan, just beat them. So he was like a football fan, but didn't know the story at all. So that was like an important thing for me, is I know the story, or I think I know the story pretty well. And my kind of producing partners all wanted someone who didn't know a thing. So Matteo was very important to start putting it together and going, I had no idea about this. I had no idea about this. Yeah. I've never seen this footage before. I've never seen this goal. So I think that is the kind of creative tension you need. People who know a lot, who are, you know, biased, and then someone who doesn't, and who's Italian, which was kind of an interesting thing. And then, Kenny just sort of naturally, he worked as a narrator in a way that I always hope, you know, Amy tells her story or Senna tells his story. The issue we had with Kenny was, is anyone going to understand him? do we have to subtitle the film? Right. Like, what do we do? That was our worry, right? It was like, do we have to subtitle it? Is it going to be like odd if we subtitle him and he's speaking English? But then the joke was, in the film, there are scenes where, like, you know, Phil Thompson and Souness and everyone's saying, what's he saying? No one knows what he's talking about. So I thought, well, that could be quite funny if we subtitled it. His own teammates don't know what he's saying. I remember
that so vividly when he does it to John Motson. I remember watching that live, you know. It's brilliant bit of humour. You know, when Motson's saying, do people understand you? Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, sharp as a tack. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. There was another one which I couldn't find. There's another one that I remember from being quite young on TV where, you know, someone tries to say something like that. One of the kind of interviewers from the TV, and they stumble on a word, on a name, and Kenny said really, really quickly, "That's easy for you to say," you know. And it was just like a classic Kenny line. And he's like, I mean, when we were doing, we've now done Q&As and things together, and he's like that. You know, when he does it to you, you can't keep up. He's done it to me quite a few times where, you know, just sort of like, just before we're about to do something, like, can you kind of get a haircut or something? Can you smarten up? You know, because we did audio interviews, Tim. He came down to London for an audio interview in a suit. You know, he's from that.
What's wrong with that?
You've got to dress up like yourself, right? You've got to dress up, even if you're doing a podcast. You've got to dress up if you're literally just recording audio. That's the man.
Yeah, so that's the world that I fear that we have lost. And he is a representative of that. Dressing well, you know, sharp. That's a world that, it's part of a world that we have lost, which obviously brings us to the emotional epicenter, you know, the Heysel and especially Hillsborough. And looking at all of that, I think it's impossible to escape a conclusion that these are the events that are the making of him and the breaking of him. Is that fair?
Yeah. And the honest truth, when I first thought about making this film, is everything about Kenny leads to Hillsborough. And so I did have a moment at the beginning thinking, I want my kids, I want young people to know about Kenny Dalglish, the player. Can I make a film about Kenny Dalglish, which is just about football? And I started interviewing people. And they said, well, if you do that, you miss the point of the man. You know, then you basically you only get half the person. So I myself went through a journey of thinking, I just want to make a film which is about all that great football and all that time. And they were like, yeah, but that's just like lots of great players, but there are not many great men. There are not many great people who stand up for the people. So that when we get there, then you realize just what they went through and the pain. I still meet people now around the world at screenings saying, I had a ticket, I gave it to my friend never came back. People who are still dealing with all of that trauma, family members who are dealing with it, you know, friends of friends. Everybody knows somebody who lost somebody or who suffered from this disaster. And that was another thing I'd say for me, my connection was the cover up, knowing that there was this cover up from a very young age. And I would say in many ways, almost like a loss, the first sort of loss of innocence. You have this thing that you like, which is football. And then there's this thing that happens that you know is wrong, but they're going to blame the people who died. They're all going to lie. And since then, until last week, when we have this report saying, well, no one's going to ever be prosecuted. You know, so that became, the story became bigger and bigger. It starts off as a small personal film and it becomes bigger and bigger because it becomes about this huge kind of event and what the cover up that came from it. And Kenny is, you can say, he becomes the man, he becomes the leader, he becomes the person that everyone loves. But he is of a certain background where you don't talk about things, you don't show emotion. You make a laugh and a gag out of things, but you hold it all in. And then, of course, that's going to affect you before anyone talks about having a breakdown or depression or all of this. That's what's going on. You know, his daughter said that, you know, she watches the film and she hears him saying things and showing emotion in a way he's never, ever shown at home to them when talking about any of this, if he talked about it at all. You know, so there are things that he said to me when we were doing the film that he's never really talked about. But I would say that that's where the film can become a bit of therapy. Now I do Q&As with him. He's really quite outspoken. You know, once you've got it out and it's out there and it's in a film and people see the film and they thank him for being who he is. I wanted to make it while he's still around him. I don't want this story happening when he's not here and everyone says, what a great guy. I wanted to do this while he's there to get the love from the people because of what he did for the people. And what I've found, what's been amazing is people who are not Liverpool fans, people who are not football fans, all of us can look at Hillsborough and go, that is wrong. And it could have been any of us. It could be any of us. And it could have been our kids. It could have been our brothers or our sisters. And it wasn't just because you were lucky. It wasn't that event that you weren't at that stadium. And the fact that this trauma has been put on a city and the people by the government. Now we know, you know, Grenfell, we know this stuff happens. I'd say Gaza, these things happen where things are going on around the world, where governments and the media and police and everyone comes together to say, no, what you are seeing with your eyes is not what's actually happening. And I would say that for me was a real key thing, Hillsborough, as a young person, and get an opportunity to then make a film which deals with this, to put it out there now, and for us to like recognize what happened, but also the people who stood up to tell the truth. Yeah,
the accountability on both sides, isn't it? There's some people, the fellow who opened the gates and then lied about opening the gates.
Yeah.
How do you live with yourself after something like that?
On a full pension, probably, didn't they?
Yeah, almost certainly. Yes. So maybe there's a huge importance in honouring those who stood up. And Dalglish took so much of this on himself, didn't it? He became the symbol of Liverpool, but he became the symbol of the soul of football, didn't he?
Yeah.
During those, in the aftermath.
He did, but you know, also I think you know, the way I would kind of describe it is that I've made a few of these biogs, and they're portraits, they're people, and a lot of it is about their faces. And what you have is Kenny, when he's the player, the joy of football, the joy of scoring a goal, that smile, the simplicity of his celebration, just two straight arms up there, you know, quite relaxed hands. It's not like anger and sliding on your knee sort of thing. It's just so beautiful and simple. And the absolute, like, the world's a better place when he smiles. And then you follow his face over time, and you follow his face as life becomes more stressful, and it becomes a manager and a player manager and the challenges. And then you get to Heysel in that face, you know, the kind of this caricature almost of the paleness, and it looks like a Munch painting. You know, he has gone through this challenge, the stress that he is carrying. And then when he's at that final match, the Everton game, 4-4 in the cup, and he sort of admits, I bottled it. I didn't know what to do anymore. I bottled it. I didn't know. I wanted to make a change and I didn't do it. And he couldn't make a decision anymore. And again, his way of, well, I'm now not doing the right thing for my club. I've got to go. You know, I've got to walk away. And it's so sad and moving. But it was, the pressure just becomes too much. And this is at a time. And you know what? And the football just carried on a few weeks later. They just carried on. That's the thing. You know, there wasn't any time for the players to deal with it.
I remembered when I was watching a film, I have absolutely no recollection of the 89 Cup final. I couldn't remember anything. And I can remember everything about all of them, you know, up to a certain point. And that one, did that happen? Because I wasn't ready, you know, I wasn't ready to process. And the following year, just so happened that I was at Villa Park when Liverpool lost that semi-final against Villa, which I think is the end, against Palace at Villa Park, which I think is the end. I think that defeat is the end. And you could see that under pressure, because they were going to win easily. It looked like they were going to win easily. And then under pressure, the whole thing collapsed. And it just became, give the ball to John Barnes and see if he can do something, which was a negation of the way that Liverpool had played for all of that time, which was collective. And it's clear that he's not able to operate at the level that he'd been operating before. So this is why I say the making of the man and the breaking stands as a giant because of what he did there. But you wonder, strictly in football terms, with his intelligence and so on, what he would have achieved without going through Heysel and especially Hillsborough.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is, though, with all of that in mind, because, you know, we can't change history, but you've got this guy who had the most incredible career at Celtic. He then was like, his career for Scotland, which, you know, a different era, so hard to qualify. They qualified again and again and again. Top scorer, joint top scorer, the highest number of caps. He comes to Liverpool. He scores the winning goal in the European Cup final. He's the only person to win the double as a player manager, scoring the winning goal to win the league, wins all those trophies, European Cups. He then becomes a manager and wins the league another 3 times. And then he goes away, comes back with a team that he brings up from the 2nd division and then wins it again with Blackburn. I'm like, that's not bad. Like, who else has done that? Mm-hmm. Who else has done that? No one. So, yeah, he may have done more. And the thing is, he could have done more. But a lot of people have just done it as a player, or people have done it just as a manager. But he kind of did the lot. And the main thing is, he's in a good place. It's cool. He did everything he needed to do for me. And I'm so glad he's still there. He's still there in the city. He's still there at the stadium. He goes to every match. He still carries himself in a way. He's loved by everyone. And I'm like, it's okay. He did it. He did enough. You know, it's important that he got out for himself at the right point to protect himself. For the first time, it's the only time in the film he talks about himself in the 3rd person. I had to do the right thing for Kenny Dalglish. So in a way, separating it. He's still like mentally separating, leaving Liverpool with this other person who left. That person has to leave to protect themselves. I didn't want to leave. You know, I find that really interesting. He never talks about himself in the 3rd person until that one moment. So yeah, I feel like he did it all. He gave everything. It's fine. I'm happy that he's still there and back again. And he did obviously come back with the club. Kind of interesting, you know, everything we're talking about when you think about Hillsborough. And there is something going on evidently this season, which is very difficult to keep talking about Diogo Jota. But we are in the period just after their friend, who's only 26 years old, died. And that, I don't know what sport that we all love and we all get caught up in. How do we as fans deal with what other people are dealing with when you lose someone? If you lose your family member, you lose your mum, or you lose your dad, or you lose someone who's 26 years old, who you're really close to, who you've been through things. how can you just like carry on and have 50,000 people shouting at you or booing you or singing about things? You know, I don't know. I don't know when we'll get to the bottom of that, if ever.
What's he think about the film? Has he told you honestly?
So Kenny had a screening. I did a screening just before we finished it for the Hillsborough survivors. That was the most emotional one. Everyone in the room had lost somebody, their mum, their dad, their brother, their sister, you know, and it was really, really, I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk at the end. I tried to do a Q&A and I just could not speak. So Kenny came and did the introduction and knew all of the families really well. So they were all there. And then he left and we did a kind of chat afterwards. And then each time we had a screen, he'd either introduce it or he'd come at the end. So I wasn't quite sure if he'd watched it. Then we had a screening up in Liverpool released, and he was there with Marina and the kids and all of the family. And I stood on the side watching them watch the film. And they were kind of, at the beginning, they kind of had a glass of champagne, all of them, and they were sort of celebrating the film. And there was loads of gags and lots of laughs. And when they see their mum and they see the kids, small, but Kelly's there and Paul are there as grown-ups. And then I saw them sort of during the film slowly sort of sliding down in their seats as we get to the final kind of third. And it was quite heavy, man. It was quite emotional for them to watch all of that again. And then luckily Kelly was the person who did the Q&A with Kenny and I. So because it was his daughter there, then he kind of lightened the mood. Marina was heckling from the crowd all the way through the Q&A, like making fun of him, making fun of everyone. So it was kind of, and as I said to you earlier on, he's like, you know, let's do another one. Let's do it again. He wants to, you know, get into Blackburn and get into everything else that happens. So you never know. It might happen.
Well, there is a series there, because I mean, one thing that was outside the scope of your wonderful film, but I want to know why he didn't have a great tournament for Scotland. You know, he played World Cups, and why is that? What went wrong there? You look at the team, the Scottish Mafia at Liverpool.
Yeah.
Why weren't they able to reproduce? So there's more there. You start off the film with "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Why did you do that? And you got Macca. You got Macca in the film. Tell us about that one.
It's mad. So Matteo, the editor, at one point, just because he was a fan, he put a Beatles track in the opening. And I was like, I wonder. And it wasn't "I Want to Hold Your Hand." It was another song. And I was like, this is, I think it was "Love Me Do" he put on. And I thought, let's not take it out. Let's just leave it there and see if there's any crazy way we can. I mean, this is not a big budget film, right? It's a dot. It costs a lot of money to license a Beatles song, right? Yeah. So I was like, let's just see. If people like it enough, then maybe we'll figure out a way. There's always a way. That's your job as a director. You've got to be a hustler. You've got to figure out a way. So I was like, but I thought,
oh, no, forget that word. Forget that word. That hustler.
Got me in a lot of trouble.
Got
me in a lot of trouble. I've started using it
really
more and more.
You can't translate that word well into Spanish.
Only you know two things that one day I kept thinking we should talk about that. The trouble I got in for that. Yeah. You betrayed me, Diego. I knew that at one point he's going to get pissed off with me. I knew at one point something would all go wrong.
Man. You called him a con man. That's what he thinks. But anyway, go on. Macca.
No. Macca. So Macca, we used the song and then we talk to Kenny and say, you know, what do you think? And he goes, I know Paul McCartney. And he puts us in touch with his management and his team. And then his team, we send them the film. They really like the film. And they give us an opportunity to license the song first in an affordable way so we can use a Beatles track for the opening. And then we find this clip of Paul McCartney after the European Cup final, where he's interviewed in France. And someone says, you know, do you have any idols? And Paul McCartney goes, not really in music, but, you know, in sports, Kenny Dalglish. And it's like brilliant because he's saying it at the time. Yeah. And the French interviewer goes, who? He goes, you know, the footballer, Kenny Dalglish. It's great. It's a great scene. So I like have this thing of like rule of thirds. If you start with the Beatles, you then have the archive where Paul McCartney at the time, and then the rule of thirds is, and then if we could get an interview, that would be amazing. So was like, there's never going to be a chance we get an interview with Paul McCartney. But then Paul McCartney essentially keeps contacting us saying, I really want to give you an interview. I'm like, let me know whenever. I'll be there. You tell me when. And then his manager's sort of texting me. I end up with he goes, do you want to come and see? He's in concert tomorrow at the O2. Can I bring my son? He's a big Beatles fan. And then it goes quiet. I'm going, well, idiot. And then I get a text back and yeah, sure, you can come. And we're like in the third row at the O2. So we end up going to a concert to see Paul McCartney, and he's like amazing. He's there for like 3.5 hours. Incredible. He's going to give you an interview. He's just busy with his world tour. And it carries on and it carries on and carries on. We've got to finish the film. We end up finishing the film, Tim. The film's done, but we still keep getting these messages saying Paul's going to record an interview. Once the film's finished, we get a message saying he's ready to record it. He's in a studio. What do you want him to say? So I send him some questions. And then Paul McCartney goes into the studio and records it all for us and sends it to me. So then we have to open the film up again. And we have this kind of moment. We have the quotes from him at the ending where he says, like, he's an honorary Scouser. You know, he's not even from Liverpool, but he's loved. And so he should be. And it's great because he wanted to do it. He really loves Kenny because of what he did for the people. So that was amazing. That was an amazing moment.
What a way to wrap up the film, isn't it? What a fantastic way to wrap up the film.
Yeah.
Will you do more with him?
I'd like to. We'll try. Yeah. I think. So you tell me, what would you like to see more?
Well, I would love to see Scotland.
Yeah.
From Kenny. Because it was an interesting time for Scotland. I mean, you can do that. There's so much political context around that as well, around especially 78, and
yes,
the view that the grotesque failure of 78 pushed back the cause of Scottish independence for a long time. So you know he's at his peak then. You know that's when he's just won the European Cup with Liverpool. So I think there's a story there. So I would like to see more of that. Yeah, maybe there's a story in Blackburn as well. I mean, I'd left by then, so I don't know anything about it. So that interests me.
I mean, that's interesting because that is when what I've heard, right? I think Rick Parry came to a screening, and then he said that the match, which is the final match in our film, the 4-4 in the cup against Everton, is literally the game everyone's watching, saying this is so exciting and so dramatic, because a few days after Kenny leaves Liverpool, that literally is the formation of the Premier League a week later. And then that brings in Sky and Murdoch and all of that, which it links back to what you were saying about Ferguson. Do you remember they used to own a percentage of Man U, didn't they?
Yeah. That's
the other thing that you were talking about. You know, that's why I would say there's a difference between, Kenny and others. So I'm like less interested because that's the kind of history that we know. Yeah. Obviously, you can never say never, but that is the history that we know because that's all they talk about. Everything before that has been like scrubbed, and so I just thought, okay, I've done my bit for of that era, but you never know. I did enjoy spending time with Kenny, and now I feel like there'll be a lot more that I could. Now he knows who I am, and trust me, maybe there'll be a lot more that he might want to talk about.
Yeah, although the essence has been done, hasn't it? And you've done that.
Yeah.
No, and it's a fabulous film. It's available on Amazon Prime. Is that right?
It's on Prime. You can rent it in places over here, but right now it's on Prime. Yeah, and then we're working right now on distribution around the world, so that's going to be hopefully announced soon. There'll be hopefully you'll be able to see it everywhere. I'm working one day. I hope I'll get it to Brazil.
Well, I mean, he's part of the Liverpool side that lose to Flamengo in 81.
I remember it.
They still sing about it over here. They sing about beating Liverpool. So just by his presence there, that means that there is an in. Obviously, there's no footage of that. There's no footage.
No, not in this one. Not in this one. But yeah, that was Zico's team, wasn't it?
That's right. Yes. It's obviously incredibly difficult to judge your kids, which one's better than the other. But of all of your, where does this stand in all of the documentaries that you've done? Where is it?
Oh, wow. Oh man, that's a tricky one because I don't think I'm allowed to say. I mean, you know, they're all different. The one that I did first is very personal for me because of the kind of, it sort of changed my life, was making Senna. Amy is like the London film, which is where I live. So that has a different kind of like personnel element to it, because it's like the streets that I lived on, and every street, you know. And then this is the football one, but then Maradona is like, there's nothing like Diego. Diego's like the biggest like story. There's no one with more drama. So they're all different. But this is the one, you know, I go to Liverpool. I go to a lot of games. I go there, and the stand opposite where I'm sitting is named after Kenny. And I'm on the pitch a few weeks ago before a game, before the Real Madrid game. I'm on the pitch standing next to Robbie Fowler and Kenny Dalglish, between God and the King, right? So this is like all of my friends, Mark, all these friends are like, you are just living the dream. And I'm still like in that weird dream where I'm on the football pitch before a Real Madrid game with Kenny Dalglish and Robbie Fowler, talking to them. Like, people asking me about football, you know, it's kind of mad. So nothing else is going to touch that, right? And then of course we beat them. So I think the other films are very kind of interesting as a piece of film work, and I love them, and I have different audiences around the world. This is the club that I've supported since I was a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and you know, you never change your team, and you're stuck with them. And I feel like I've done my little bit of Liverpool history for Kenny, for my favourite player, whose picture I had on the wall. Now I have a poster on the wall from him, right? With him having signed it to me, which is mad.
So you've done it all, but you can't retire. We want more. We need more. What's next?
I'm on it. I've got some stuff for you, Tim. I've got a few things. You'll have to let me know when you're back over here. I've got a political series that I'm in the middle of, which is going to be amazing. There's a kind of big kind of humanist series, which I think is going to be interesting because it's about life. And then I've also working on another music show. So there's quite a few things I'm in the middle of. I've been quite busy. I'll let you know.
I can't wait, because I love them all. And thank you very, very much for your time with us today. And thank you even more for registering the life and times of a wonderful player and an even better person, and a figurehead, I think, of all that was best of the collective values that our country has turned its back on, which is Kenny Dalglish. Asif, thank you very much. And that was the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast.
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast on Twitter at BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us brazilianshirtnamepod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast is an 1129 production.